Hey everyone, I'm Chris Lesniak,
And I'm Rob Byer, and this is,
the Debate Math Podcast. Hello and welcome back to our summer hot seat series.
as a reminder, this is where we put some educators or speakers with interesting ideas or strong opinions in a hot seat where they will share their thoughts. And Chris and I will play the role of cross examining them a little bit,
Hmm.
almost like a devil's advocate.
Yeah, and quick note, regardless of our personal thoughts on the topic, Rob and I will be pushing back on the ideas presented, so our questions don't necessarily reflect our personal views.
And with that, let's get to our next one.
All right, our hot seat guest today is here arguing for the statement, schools should teach listening skills. And our guest is an author, a keynote speaker, a consultant, coach, thought leader, entrepreneur, and radio show host with 25 plus years in the field of emotional intelligence, psychology, and education. She earned her BS in psychology at Millersville University and a master's in psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. She was also a gifted All American field hockey athlete. She gives customized, actionable, and inspirational talks designed to make you a better listener. It's Christine Miles. Hello, Christine.
Hello, guys. I can chair dance. That's what I learned. That's the only kind of dance I can do is the chair.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah,
can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
sure. I'm in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So if some people have heard of King of Prussia, I'm about 20 minutes from there, 45 minutes outside the city. My role is the CEO of Equipped, which is the company name, and the creator of the Listening Path, which is the path to understanding.
Awesome. And now the question that we ask all of our guests, when did math first become controversial to you?
Yeah, well, the biggest controversy, I don't know if it's the first, but it's the most memorable, was in the ninth grade with Mr. Berninsky. He and I struggled together. Oh, I named names, didn't I? It probably wasn't his fault. It was probably a little bit of my fault. But Algebra 1, it turned me off to math, I'm sad to say. I learned later in life that I'm dyslexic, so algebra just stopped the train. I had no idea what was going on.
Thanks for sharing that. And with
Yeah.
that, let's get into the debate. All right, we begin with your opening statement from our guest. Christine, you have 2 minutes to present your argument, and your time begins now.
So listening is the most critical skill that we are not taught how to do. So we devote 0 years of formal education to listening, and yet we spend 45 to 55% of our time listening in the workplace, in school settings, and 85% of what we learn is through listening. So we actually treat listening like walking. It is an assumed skill, much like walking. If you have two legs and they're healthy, you'll learn to walk. If you have two ears, you'll learn to listen. And nothing could be further from the truth. Listening is something that needs to be nurtured, it needs to be developed, and it needs to be taught. Um, Believe it or not, Harvard Business Review did a study, 96% of people believe themselves to be good listeners. And I say, what? Are you kidding me? If you ask anybody's experience, they will say something very different, and that most people overestimate their listening skills, much like their driving skills. They tend to overestimate and think they are above average than they actually are. So listening is something we're taking for granted. We're assuming it's innate, and we're expecting to people to just do it because we've told them to do so. Ralph Nichols, the father of listening, said in his book in 1957, from elementary school through college, we are basically just reprimanding people to listen. Pay attention, listen up. Now hear me, do this, and we're not doing anything differently. So I think it's one of the definitions of crazy, which is to do something dysfunctional over and over again and expect it to work differently. The first thing we're told to do when we're little, and we're not doing it very well.
Yeah, thank you. So, as we get into this, so Chris and I have had long discussions about this, and we feel that like debate and argumentation are the
Yeah.
most important skill to teach. So, like you said, listening, like is there a crossover there, or like how do those two fit?
What's really hard to counter argue and debate when you haven't heard the counterpoint of view. So it's listening is the fundamental negotiation skill. It's conflict management, it's negotiation, it's problem solving, It's debate because you're really getting to the root issue, which allows you to formulate your critical thinking to create an opposite side or an opposite opinion, even if you don't agree with it, which is what you said at the beginning. So, so that's why it's so critical. So it's foundational, and it's not only foundational to these things we have to enact, but I believe it's foundational to our emotional intelligence, because simply put, self-awareness, other awareness really comes down to how do you listen to yourself and how do you listen to others. So there's a lot there.
I like that you describe it as an assumed skill in your opening statement. And so I wonder for teachers out there, is it even teachable? Like it's an assumed
Yeah.
skill, like it's just something we think we know. How can you even teach listening?
Yeah, so I had a call last night with some colleagues and I was walking them through the listening path and they said, I thought I knew what listening was. I get it now. I don't even know what it is. Well, how can you know what it is if you've never been taught how to do it? So I think we assume we're better listeners than we are. We know some people are better than most, right? But it's still that we're winging it. Yeah, so that's part of why it's hard to get our arms around and why teachers and educators, and by the way, business people, not just in schools, those in education and business, focus on the behaviors like eye contact and being looking at the person and making sure you're being present as a formative listening skill when that's just really the starting point. That's like getting on the race line and just being ready to start the button, not really in the game.
Yeah, so it's teachable, but now I'm wondering like who has time for this? Like teachers have, all this content and they also want to teach collaboration and group work and
Yeah.
I find time for students to just decompress. Like you're adding one more thing to their plate. Is this too much? How are we going to fit this in?
So I think it is too much. I think so. My biggest problem in my world, I've been in the field of listening since I was 5, so there's a backstory there. But in the field of communication for a long time, and I've been thinking and working on this since 2010, 2011, to figure out how to scale. So I've taken what I know is my superpower, which is to really listen to understand. But the hardest thing to do has been to replicate this in a way that's simple, easy, and plug and play. And so that's really my mission is to bring a simple fix to that gap where teachers don't have the burden of having to teach this skill, but they can utilize the language in the classroom, much like they didn't have to invent the ABCs, did they? The language was already built, but they know that the charts are in the room and so they can teach that language. The same is true for listening. We just haven't created it for them yet. I believe I'm bringing that to the table for educators.
Kind of what Chris was talking about too. I work a lot with some math educators, all around the state and even throughout the country. The thing that keeps them awake at night are the state standards. Whatever state
Hmm.
you're in, the
Yeah.
state standards. So, and they feel like they don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
That like I have to hit this standard, I have to hit this standard, I have to hit this standard. So how like if we're trying to teach listening also, is that like an additional thing, or is that something that is like built within and built throughout?
So I think it needs to be in the language. So this is what I've not worked in an elementary school or high school personally. I have educators surrounding me, but my master's is in education in the field of psychology, and I've spent a lot of time in schools. So we know that in all the curriculum, it says listen, right? You're supposed to do it. It's baked into the core standards. It's baked into everything you're doing. It's just it's not taught how. So the same is true in sales trainings, by the way. The first thing they tell you to do is to, when you go out in the real world, is to sell, is to listen to understand your customers' needs. But guess what? They don't teach you how to do. They just teach you how to do the sales process and know the product. And then the sales managers and companies are frustrated because they don't know how to get the problems, needs, and pains. So we're just missing a really important step. So we need to bake it into everything we do and how we talk and what we teach. So that language is just a matter of educating the teachers on the language and letting the program that I've created do the work so it's not arduous, but they can use that as they're teaching those critical math skills and those debate skills and those other things so it's not so arduous.
So, okay, so take me into like into a classroom like you guys have worked with, that your team has worked with, and you have these math educators around you. So if I'm a teacher, um, let's say elementary or middle, I mean you can pick. If I'm a teacher, like what would that look like in a
Yeah.
lesson? Like how can I build that in? Like you said that it's kind of folded in, but like what's something like actionable? Like what could it look like?
So let me start like let's take we talked athletics. So I was a field hockey player, and most people think when they got to get in shape, what do they have to do? They have to join a gym, they have to do Orange Fitness, they have to, make sure they're hitting the weights, and they build these huge programs, and most people quit after maybe a month if we're lucky. What we need to learn how to do is just walk 10 minutes a day. So the program that called the listening path for classrooms is that just that it's a 20-minute lesson that gets instituted in the teaching of the language. And then for 10 minutes a day in each lesson, you're just practicing the skills so that it's just going for a short walk every day so that you're building the muscle, you're building the acuity. I, we've just made listening way too complicated. Active listening, which is designed the same with the same intention as mine, which is to help people understand what's not said, to understand the meaning, to uncover the insight. There's 12 behaviors that you need to enact in order to be actively listening. It was designed for psychologists. Instead, we just need to make it simple so that people can apply it very quickly. So there's 12 total tools on the listening path. For the elementary school, there's 5. For high schools, there's the full 12. And when you know what those tools are, you know what that language is, you can pull them out and use them in every conversation, whether you're learning about math or whether you're learning about your best friends who just lost a loved one or just had something wonderful happen to them. You're listening with the same language.
So I want to go back to you said like we taught listening as with reprimand, like we were forcing people to like just be a
Yeah,
listener and stuff. So can you paint us a picture like what does it look like in the classroom to teach without being reprimanding at students? Like how do we
yeah.
encourage them to listen and motivate them to listen?
Yeah. So the story of the listening path is you wouldn't go hiking into the woods unprepared, right? With your good intentions. So as I like to say, no, some people might say I'm not going hiking in the woods no matter what you tell me to do. So I say okay, but if I dropped you in the middle of the forest, you would go in with supplies. We know that's kind of crazy not to. So in the conversation or the conversational woods, we're going in unprepared all the time. It's like expecting me to know how to do math when you've never shown me the formula. So what we do is we give you the formula for listening, which are the tools to understand. And as I said, there's 5 in the elementary classroom. And when you use those tools, it leads to that understanding. So the program teaches those fundamental tools, and then you practice that in every conversation.
And then kind of adding on to that, so everything like as math teachers, all this content, students are held accountable by, the final exam or the state
Yeah.
test. Do you see listening be something that we somehow assess of students at some points? And what does that look
Yeah.
like? Yeah.
Yeah, so for the fall, we'll have this program ready for full. We're already launching it in Ireland in a high school, but we'll have it as a certificate so that you have to pass certain tests when you hit different gates, and then you earn a certificate, and that's something you can put on your resume and be ready for future of work in terms of the workplace. And so the key to it is that listening is supposed to be fun. It's discovery. Like, isn't debate fun? Why is it fun? I hear your side and I go, even if I don't agree with that, if I listen well, I can formulate an argument. And we can, in that conversation, in that debate, we can come to a better answer. So that's part of what the listening does in terms of let's come to better answers and more meaningful conversations, no matter what we're talking about. And that's what really changes it, makes it exciting for kids rather than just listen to me because I said so. Listen to me because I know how, as the listener, how to make you more interesting and get more of what I need.
In a class, like is this something that can be assessed? Is this something that, I mean, it's not going to be like a formal assessment
Yeah,
where it's like written, but like
yeah.
is there some type of a strategy or like a rubric or something that teachers could look for to be able to assess listening skills? Is that can we assess that? Coming
There's,
from a
yeah,
teacher standpoint, like that's what they're going to ask. So
there's all kinds of ways currently that you can now assess listening. It's just what are you assessing for? Are you assessing for I'm looking at you? Are you assessing for what you comprehend? So it depends on what your assessment is. So what we assess and what we'll assess is not only understanding what the tools do, but what the meaning or insight that you get out of the conversation. See, the people think the goal of listening is to hear it. The real goal of listening is to understand it. And understanding is a figment of our imaginations. So you can say something to me and I can think I understand it, but I don't know if I understand it until you and I confirm with you in a meaningful way that I understand it. And once you get to that point, then all kinds of things are discovered and new answers are discovered. So that's really what we want to, that's what we're going to be assessing as we continue to scale this is what are people comprehending, not just what are they paying attention to.
I like what you're you're saying here, all these good things, and it goes along with debate really well. I guess my one of my last questions here is just in the world that we live in right now and the polarization and the current politics, like, does listening even matter? Like, should we care? It seems like those who are, politicians on social media don't care. So why should we?
Yeah. Wow, that's such a great and depressing question, isn't it? So, I this is why it matters so much. So, innovations at stake. Uh, differences matter. We need to embrace differences to get to the best innovation. So listening isn't about agreeing. It's that's the problem. We are listening and deciding what we're listening to based on agreement rather than on trying to bring divergent perspectives to the table to come to better ideas. So I think we've gotten uncomfortable with disagreeing and really trying to get good at disagreeing. And I think this is what we're losing, which is what I love what you're doing because the debate is where the answers are. It's where we challenge our thinking and our ideas to come to better answers. So this is a critical 21st century skill. So, and I look at it like in elementary school, we're teaching them to learn and we're teaching them to be future workers. So the sooner we start that and the more technology takes over and the more AI comes into play, the more we need to differentiate ourselves as human. And our emotional quotient is going to be the factor that really defines that. It's already, I used to sell air for a living. Trust me, like you sell listening for a living, people are like, that doesn't exist. Where's that? So now in this hyper awareness of AI and the marginalization of what makes us different, business leaders, schools, educators are seeing how critical this is. It's becoming more commonplace to have these discussions, which is quite a relief to me. So I think it matters more than ever.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And then the last thing, so if teachers really want to know more, where can they go for resources? What are the things they are looking for if they want to figure out how to teach listening?
Yeah. So we'll make it easy for them. So they can come to the listeningpath.com. Our program are 20-minute to 30-minute lessons that teach the path, and then we give them all the resources they need to use that language in the classroom. They can also go to my book. It has the first 6 tools on the listening path that'll give them an entree. Podcasts like this that I talk about my how the path works, and they can get information there. And they can find me at Christine Miles Listens.
Okay, well, that concludes our questioning round.
We will now end by giving Christine a few minutes to make her final argument to you. Go ahead, floor is yours.
So you asked me earlier if listening matters, and this is what I like to get people to think about. So I want your listeners to think back to the last time somebody didn't listen to them. Was it their partner dismissing their concerns, their child absorbed in their phone when you asked them to clean up their room? Maybe it was their boss. That's a yes, Rob. Maybe it was their boss interrupting them mid-sentence. And think about how that made you feel. Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't warm and fuzzy. You probably felt hurt or frustrated or misunderstood or unimportant or invisible. So these aren't just words, these are emotional wounds that we've all felt and experienced. And I'd also like them to think about when the last time they were the one who didn't listen. Were they the one tuning out when their partner was sharing about their day or too busy on their computer or phone when their child was trying to talk to them? And in the business world or in the colleague world, were we formulating our response or our sales pitch to make our point when the other person was speaking? So there's a universal, human truth that we've been on both sides of the listening problem. We've either suffered or inflicted these wounds. And that is why listening matters, because it affects every aspect of our lives invisibly. And so I think it's critical that we stop the bleeding, stop the madness, and finally make this a skill that's learned and nurtured and developed. But I also believe it's not fair to burden that with the teachers for all the reasons that you just shared. They have too much to do, so we have to start giving them things that make their lives easier and more productive, and their classrooms more productive, that help them meet the standards, but also bring joy and a different level of learning to the classroom. So that's the mission. That's what listening can do. It can just turbocharge absolutely everything. And the sooner we learn this, and the more we enable children with this superpower, I promise that the world will be a better place. So let's change the world one listener at a time.
Love it. Thank you. And that concludes this debate. And I hope this gives educators out there some really good food for thought.
And now it's up to our listeners to take a moment, ponder this hot seat discussion, and share what resonated with you. How can you incorporate listening skills into your classroom, into your everyday life? Be sure to follow us on BlueSky at Debate Math Pod to share your thoughts on this debate. What stood out to you?
And huge thanks to our guest, Christine Miles. Thank you for joining us. You were thoughtful, respectful, passionate, and really brought in all these good debate skills around listening. I loved it.
Thank you for having me. It's a real treat. Thank you.
Thanks to all those who are listening. We hope you enjoyed and learned from this tonight.
And so as we wrap up, Christine, once again, where can listeners find you and what kind of stuff can they get from all your resources?
Yeah, come to the listeningpath.com. The program is designed by teachers for teachers, 20 to 30-minute lessons. We incorporate the parents into the learning. We create a system of listening around the students. So the educator, the parents, and the students all learn this language in a simple, fun, and transformative way. So find us at thelisteningpath.com.
All right, thank you.